Chapter 42, The Plan, From the Wild Robot Escapes. Jaya pressed a button on the side of the milking parlor, and the doors hummed open. She and her brother stepped inside and wound their way past gleaming pipes and tanks, and over to where Roz was cleaning some equipment. "We found a diagram of your design," said Jaya. "We think we can help you escape." "The problem is your transmitter," said Jad. "That's the device that sends out electronic signal. If we can remove your transmitter, you'll be able to run away whenever you want, without anyone tracking you." "Do you know how to remove it?" asked Roz. "I think so," the boy chuckled nervously. "But we won't know for sure until we open you up and have a look. We have to do it late at night," said Jaya, "when Dad is sleeping." "We just need to find a place where we can work in private," said Jad, rubbing his chin. "How about the old barn?" said Roz. "It's quiet and hidden. I can prepare the barn today, and you can operate on me tonight." Everyone agreed, and the plan was set. Chapter 43, The Operation. Midnight, and the children were wide awake in their beds. Jaya and Jad were waiting for their father to fall asleep. Once he was snoring deeply, they tiptoed past his bedroom, down the stairs, and out the back door. They crept across the farm to a cluster of trees, and there was the old barn, looming above the undergrowth like a mountain. Its door was open a crack, and a wedge of light spilled outside. The children closed the door behind them and walked past wooden railings and stairways and up a ramp to a platform in the back corner of the barn. Lanterns hung from the walls and cast their soft light upon a large table. Standing behind the table was a robot. "Hello, children," said Roz. "How do you like our operating room?" "It's a little dark," said Jaya, "but it'll work." Jad pulled his computer from his pocket. As he brought up the diagram of Roz's body, his face tightened with worry. "We've never done anything like this before." "Just do your best," said Roz, patting him on the back. "That is all I can ask from you." The robot unfastened her tool belt and draped it over the railing. Then she lay flat on the table. It was time to begin. Jaya looked down at Roz. "All set?" Roz looked up at Jaya. "All set." The girl felt under the robot's head and found the button and clicked it with her fingers. Click! Roz's body relaxed. Her quiet whirling sound stopped, and her eyes faded to black. Then he grasped the robot's head in his hands and twisted it. Thwip! It popped off. In a smooth socket, where the head had been, was just another button. Jaya pressed it, and the robot's chest opened up. They peered into the hollow chest cavity and saw a tangle of tubes connected to a grid of boxes. These were the robot's electronic organs. "That's the transmitter," said Jad, pointing. The children reached into the robot's chest, carefully removed the tube, and set them on the table. "That was easy," said Jaya, smiling. "Actually, I think this is the transmitter over here," said Jad, and he removed another box. Then Jaya removed another tube. The boy checked his computer and said, "I might have this backward." A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead as he removed another box. "Wait, I think we should start over." Jaya nudged her brother out of the way and started plugging parts back into the robot's chest. "I don't know about you, reader, but I'm a little confused." So were the children confused too? Pretty soon, Roz's internal parts were strewn across the table, and nobody knew where anything was supposed to go. "Why did you remove so many boxes?" yelled Jaya. "Why'd you remove so many tubes?" said Jad. The siblings argued for a while. Then they sat quietly for a while. The children were tired and cranky and afraid that they'd never get Roz to work again. Jaya slumped against the table and looked up at the ceiling. Then her eyes drifted to the lantern dimly glowing above, and then she had an idea. She climbed onto a wooden railing, grabbed one of the lanterns from its hook, and climbed back down. Then she held the lantern close to Roz's body. Jad noticed that there were different numbers lightly etched into the internal parts. Now things were starting to make sense. The children quickly removed the correct box and tube. They put the robot back together and they turned her on. Click! Roz's body tensed. Her quiet whirling slowly started. Her eyes began to glow, but she didn't say a word. "Are you okay?" asked Jad. Roz pointed to her mouth. "Can you speak?" asked Jaya. Roz shook her head. "She can't speak," cried the boy. "We must have put something back in the wrong place." Click. The children opened Roz's body, rearranged some of her internal parts, and put them back together again. Click. Roz powered up and said, "Children, I can now speak, but I cannot move." Click. After several hours of trial and error, and with the morning light seeping into the barn, the operation was a success. Roz stood up, scanned her internal parts, and said, "Children, you did it! You removed my transmitter. Thank you so much for your help." "You're very welcome," said Jaya, yawning. Jad checked his computer. "I can still see your signal on the map," he said. "Your transmitter is still working, so keep it close to you until you leave the farm." And then he stuffed the little electronic device into the robot's tool belt. "Children, there is just a bit of bad news," said Roz in a serious tone. "I know you've been up all night, but I'm afraid it's time for you both to get ready for school." Chapter 44, The Patient Robot. After being trapped on Hilltop Farm for nearly a year, Roz was now free to run away anytime she liked. But without Bright Bill to guide her, she wouldn't make it far. So the robot patiently waited for spring to come and for her son to return, so they could begin their long journey together home. Chapter 45, The Barn Conversations. As winter dragged on, Roz spent more of her time inside with the herd. There were long stretches of quiet. The cows chewed their hay. The robot tapped the farm computer. The wind gently rattled the windows, and then someone would start talking. Someone else would chime in, and the quiet barn would gradually become overtaken with conversations like this. "I'm so bored." Tess was staring at the floor. "I can't wait till spring. Then I can wander through the tall grass and feel the warm sun on my back. I just hope I don't die of boredom first." Old Annabelle snorted. "You young cows are so spoiled rotten," she said. "Your lives are easy, and still you find things to complain about." Tess rolled her eyes. Yeah, we should be grateful for what we've got. You've told us before." "Well, you should be grateful for what you got," said Annabelle. I've lived on other farms, and trust me, you have nothing to complain about. Tess couldn't help being curious. She asked, what were those other farms like? Oh, I'd rather not discuss them, said Annabelle in a low, serious voice. You see, I witnessed some terrible things on those farms. It was a blessing when I moved here. But I often think about the animals I left behind, and I hope they're okay. The old cow sank into thought for a moment. I know life here isn't perfect, she said at last, but we have so much to be grateful for. We have our lovely herd, we have this beautiful barn, and we have Roz, said Tess. And we have Roz. Annabelle turned and smiled at the robot in the corner. Roz listens to us and treats us with love and kindness, and she makes our lives as comfortable as she possibly can. We certainly will miss her when she's gone. Roz, why do humans need so much cow's milk? Said Lily as the other calves crowded around her. It was a question they'd all been wondering about. Well, there are billions of humans in the world, explained Roz, and many of them drink milk and combine it with other ingredients to make different food. What kind of food? Asked another calf. Butter and cheese and yogurt are made with milk, said Roz. Many desserts are also made from milk. What's a dessert? Asked someone. A dessert is a sweet food eaten at the end of a meal. Popular desserts include cake and custard and ice cream. This only raised more questions. What's cake? What's custard? What's ice cream? Roz tried her best to explain these foods to the calves, but it wasn't easy. After all, the robot couldn't even perform the simple act of eating. How could she possibly describe the flavors and sensations of tasty, delicious desserts? Lily interrupted. Just tell me this, Roz. When we're older, will our milk be used to make desserts? Yes, said the robot. The calves smiled. Then they trotted away, happy in the knowledge that someday they'd bring some sweet and delicious things into the world. It's almost spring, said Roz to the herd. It is almost time for me to run away, back home to the wilderness. I'm sorry I must leave you. But you will be well cared for when I'm gone, I promise. Cows began mooing in their stalls. Don't worry about us, Roz. There's no need to apologize. We understand why you're running away. Lily poked her head through the railings of her stall and said, I could never run away to the wilderness. I would be too frightened. I'd love to roam through the wilderness, said Tess. It sounds so exciting. No wilderness for me, thank you very much, said Annabelle. I just want a quiet, cozy life. I have plenty to fear from the wilderness, said Roz. However, I have more to fear here. I can never be my true self around humans, and so I must remain here until I return to my home. I only wish I could do it by myself, she went on, but I need help. I could never escape from the farm without the children, and I could never find my way home without my son. I feel bad for asking so much of them. Don't feel bad, said Lily. Bright Bill and the children want to help you. They love you. We all do. The farm wouldn't feel the same without you, Roz. But we know you're doing the right thing. The herd agreed with Lily, and throughout the barn, cows quietly nodded their heads. Chapter 46, The Spring. With each passing day, the sun climbed a little higher in its rays and grew a little warmer. The last patch of snow melted away and returned to the land. The pasture, the fields, the trees, they were all turning bright green, and the air slowly filled with the fresh smell of spring. Many of the cows had been steadily growing bigger, and now calving season had arrived. When the time was right, each cow went into the pasture so her calf could be born in the soft grass. The robot stood nearby just in case anyone needed her help, but nobody ever did. Even the first-time mothers knew what to do instinctively, and soon newborn calves were frolicking around the farm. Spring was a happy, exciting time, and yet Roz was distracted. More and more she found herself looking to the skies, hoping to see Brightbill and his flock. She knew they were on their way. Chapter 47, The Diner. Mr. Sharif hopped out of the truck with his arms full of shopping bags. He limped toward the farmhouse, dragging his leg in the usual way. And then he fell. Roz ran over and found the man sprawled on the driveway, groceries scattered around him. "Are you okay?" she asked, pulling him to his feet. "I'm fine," he grumbled. Roz started picking up the groceries and said, "Let me help you inside." A minute later, the two of them were stepping into the house. Jackets and hats hung from pegs on the wall. Shoes were lined up beneath a bench. The man peeled off his boots and hollered, "Kids, it's time to cook dinner." Footsteps pounded across the ceiling, and the children came flying down the staircase with their dog. "Is Roz having dinner with us?" asked Jaya. "Roz doesn't eat," said Jad. "I know that, but she could sit with us." "How about it, Roz?" asked Mr. Sharif. "Care to join us for dinner?" The robot stared at the family. The family smiled at the robot. "What would you like me to do?" said Roz. In a very proper voice, Jad said, "I would greatly enjoy the pleasure of your company for dinner." The children didn't wait for a response. They snatched the groceries from Roz and scampered off, Oscar running after them, barking, "Is that food? It smells like food. I want food." The wooden floor creaked as Roz followed Mr. Sharif through the living room. A comfy chair and a sofa faced a darkened electronic screen. Above the fireplace hung a painting of a familiar old barn. Doorways led to other rooms. Roz glanced into Mr. Sharif's office and saw a portrait of his family, including his wife, Mrs. Sharif. She was pretty with dark curly hair and a bright smile. It was the same smile Roz saw in the children. "Look, Jaya's crying like a baby," came Jad's giggly voice from the kitchen. When Roz walked in, the girl was chopping an onion with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Roz, I order you to chop this onion for me," said Jaya, wiping her tears. The robot picked up a knife, and in a flash, the onion was perfectly chopped and dumped into a bowl. Clearly, Roz was designed to chop onions. "Roz, I order you to take the night off," Mr. Sharif laughed. "The kids and I want to cook. We enjoy it." More vegetables were chopped, skillets started sizzling, delicious aromas swirled together, and before long a magnificent meal was set on the dinner table. Oscar positioned himself below to catch food scraps, and everyone took a seat. Mr. Sharif turned to his daughter. "Would you like to say grace?" The girl lowered her head. "Thank you, God, for this yummy food that we're about to gobble down. Amen." "Thank you, Jaya," said Farmer Sharif with a wink. And thank you, Roz, for everything you have done this past year. I had my doubts, but now I can't imagine what we'd do without you." The children looked at each other, and the family grabbed their knives and forks and dug into dinner. A careful leafy salad, a plate of sautéed asparagus, creamy mashed potatoes, buttered bread, and a tall glass of milk. The meal was beautiful, but as Roz scanned the table, her eyes kept returning to the roasted chicken. It was about the size of Brightville. Suddenly, the robot had a lot of questions. Do chickens live happy lives? Did this chicken know it would be eaten? Were humans bad for eating animals? No, thought Roz, humans were simply following their instincts, like all creatures, like Roz herself. At least the Sharifs honored this animal by giving thanks and by turning it into a beautiful, nourishing meal. After he'd finished eating, Mr. Sharif stepped out of the room, and he returned a moment later carrying a violin and a bow. "Growing up, I dreamed of being a musician," he said, thumping back into his chair. He tuned the instrument, put it under his chin, and started to play. His bow glided back and forth. His fingers danced across the strings, and a lovely old-fashioned song filled the room. Mr. Sharif tapped his foot as the notes rang out, soft and loud, soft, slow, and then fast. The song ended with a flourish, and the music faded to silence. Then he rested the violin on his knee. "This instrument has been in our family a very long time," he said, "since the days when Cyrus Sharif first built this farm." Cyrus Sharif. Roz knew that name. She unsnapped a pocket from her tool belt and pulled out a small journal. "I discovered this in the old barn," she said, handing it over. The children huddled around their father as he took the journal. They read their ancestor's name on the cover. Then they carefully opened it and turned the brittle pages. "I've never seen this journal before," said Mr. Sharif. "It's a piece of our family history. Kids, look at how they used to milk the cows." Roz left the Sharifs like that, examining the journal, learning about their family's history. But what about their family's future? Their lives were difficult. They needed help. And Roz was about to run away forever. As she marched back into the barn that night, the robot felt something like worry and confusion and guilt.